Yeah, so joined Kewaskum July 1st of this year. Very excited for the opportunity and the position. Became aware of the Kewaskum opportunity when Julie Thoreson, the previous business manager, was retiring. She sent an email out kind of southeast Wisconsin wide and kind of saw the email and kind of let it go. But as I thought about it, and I knew Julie from just our
When was
collegial,
that email?
probably in February, kind of that time frame. And then reached out to Julie and inquired more. The email said that it was a solid district from a financial perspective, facilities were in good shape, board community dynamics are supportive, superintendent's great to work with, good tenor with the district. And so kind of thought about that and gave Julie that call and found out some more information about the district and decided to put my name in for the position. Came in and interviewed, that went pretty well, I thought, and got to know Mark a little bit better, and then accepted the position. Like I said, started July 1st, so excited for the opportunity. I've worked for districts that are kind of like-minded to Kewaskum in a lot of ways. So East Troy was my first district where I was in a lead role. That was way back in 2005, I want to say, 2006, somewhere in that range. Went from East Troy to Elmbrook Schools, which is Brookfield, Elm Grove, kind of just into the Waukesha County arena. Joined Elmbrook just prior to Act 10 and all that coming into place, and assumed at Elmbrook I was the assistant superintendent for finance operations, and then assumed the HR side too as Act 10 came into place. So we got a lot of quick experience with employee handbooks and movement from collective bargaining to being more of a typical employee arrangement. At that same time, we moved from a more traditional school district health plan to a high deductible type of approach, first with an HRA, then an HSA to substitute for that. So just a lot of things were happening at that time, changing the landscape of school finance and benefits and employee dynamics and all sorts of things. So got a good experience there. Elmbrook also went through, at that time, it was about $65 million in facility renovations to both of their high schools, built two elementary schools also a few years prior, so helped wrap up all that and get that construction into place. So good experience there. Very fiscally conservative board there. Senator Ted Canavas was on the school board just before I got there and then was a state senator, so he was still engaged with that, became a great conduit for legislative discussions on school finance and how we can improve that. And I've kind of kept those links going, even though Senator Canavas is no longer in the Senate, kept that going with the area representatives. Went from Elmbrook to a private sector employer that does school finance consulting, as well as bond issuance, referendum planning, that kind of thing, and worked mostly with districts in the suburban Chicago area. Tried to get a stronghold in Wisconsin. It's a tough market in Wisconsin. There's some good presence there already. The company I work for was out of Minneapolis, so strong presence in Minnesota, strong presence in Illinois, but Wisconsin was just a tough place to go, and that became tiresome of traveling to Chicago most days. So kind of looked for an opportunity back in public education. Went to Menominee Falls School District and got the call there. Great exposure there, kind of goes back to my West Bend days. So early on, prior to East Troy, I was a finance manager for West Bend as I pursued my master's degree, and worked with Pat Greco briefly there. She called me back to work with her again in Menominee Falls. Again, a very fiscally astute and aware community and board, and I like working in that dynamic. That's my comfort zone too. I like to know rules. I like to know where things stand. And so accomplished a lot of good things, I think, in the Menominee Falls days. Did a facility referendum that was successful there, 2 failed operating referendums. Then we made the budget reductions needed for those failed operating referendums, and they're still in solid financial place because of making those tough decisions back at that time. They still have the benefits of the successful facility referendum, did a lot of good things with those dollars in their district. So went from there to Wauwatosa, and so a lot of news about Wauwatosa recently. We'll get into that a little bit for now, but when I heard about the Kewaskum opportunity, it fit more kind of where my comfort zone is, what my mindset is, and it seemed like a great fit and opportunity for me. So here I am at this point here in Kewaskum.
When did you apply for this job?
I want to say it was posted maybe in February, early March. I'm trying to remember when the
I
actual,
have to double check.
Yeah, can you get that for me?
could have been even in January. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, I was told December.
Could have been. But like I said, I saw the email go out. I didn't apply for it right away. Kind of thought about it for a little while and then reached out to Julie, so.
So what was that interview process then like?
Here in Kewaskum? Yeah, it was in this room, and it was set up as a U-shaped table. There were probably 15 people in the room. I would say five, and five maybe. Maybe not quite that many, but something
12
close to that. Went through I think it was a 10 or 15 minute kind of presentation of yourself, kind of just what I just did. What's your history? Why do you like school finance? How would you be a fit for this district? If I recall correctly, the district leadership team was represented. I think there were a couple of teachers. I know the business office staff was here. There were 2 or 3 board members. I don't recall exactly how many were there. And went through the typical interview process in that room, and then had some follow-ups with Mark, and kind of that led to the position being offered and me accepting.
With the committee that you interviewed with, what kind of questions were you asked?
I would say it was, they start out typically with, some specific questions on school finance, budget process, your leadership style, your vision for Kewaskum, based on what you know and what you've looked at with the system. I think part of the interview process is to see how serious people are, to see if they've actually taken some time to research the district and understand their funding climate and some of the dynamics, some of the things that are happening in the system. So some questions around that. Thought they were a good question set. Not too easy, not too difficult. It was something that they wanted to kind of get to know you and understand kind of how you might fit
Were
in
there
the system.
questions about Wauwatosa financing?
I don't recall if there were.
Who, were these sample questions, provided questions?
They were not provided in advance. I had a piece of paper in front of me with the questions on them as they were asking them, but
So who provided that?
it was on the table when I got there.
So who wrote that?
A collaborative effort from the team.
So were those the questions that were then asked of everybody?
Yes.
So did they stray from that list of questions?
So, Judy, the purpose of this is to get to know Keith, not to go through our hiring process.
I understand, I'm just
Okay.
asking.
Yeah, we use the same question set for all the candidates.
And that was provided by the district then?
Like I said, yeah, I wrote them in collaboration with some other members of the interview team.
Okay, so were there any questions on there about Wauwatosa?
I'd have to double check.
Okay, can you get that for me?
Sure.
All right. So then how did it advance after that?
Mark and I had discussions on the role. I think getting to know each other a little bit better and making sure that Mark thought I was a fit and vice versa.
And we went from, what, was it 15 applicants or?
I'd have to double check the numbers.
So you made a final 5, a final 7?
Something like that, I'd have to look.
Oh, do you know how that was selected?
Again, Judy, the purpose of this is.
I understand, we're getting there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just asking, just so I have knowledge about how we got to here.
Sure. So how did the selection process go?
Yeah,
Yeah, we have a screening sheet that we take a look at all the applications.
sure. So was Keith the top person?
We don't have necessarily a priority ranking, we just pull the ones that we feel like based off of their letters of recommendation, their application.
Sure. Were there any letters of recommendation from the Wauwatosa School District?
I'd have to, I think I emailed you about that already. You had some questions about letters of recommendation, I think I provided that.
Right, but then who did they come from?
Again, I think I.
Right, you said that you used, that you could not provide it, but you said you got some stellar letters, and those I
Yes.
did not get.
Again, I can't provide the letters of recommendation.
Okay. Did it raise any red flags about not receiving anything from Wauwatosa?
No, and again, I'm I think I've answered the question about the letters of recommendation, what I can provide and what I can't.
Okay, would nobody send anything from Wauwatosa on your behalf?
I didn't ask Wauwatosa.
Why not?
So I don't really want to get into Wauwatosa either at this time. I will, there'll be a good time and place to get into Wauwatosa, but at this time,
When,
not comfortable
when
with
would
it.
that be?
Given the public dynamics that they've kind of set up, I think it's better for me to kind of play the proper channels, even though they, I don't think did, but.
I don't understand what you're talking about. Proper channels,
So,
that who they,
again, this is the get to know Kevin, right?
Keith, yeah.
Or Keith, sorry.
Kevin's different, yeah.
Yes,
I
sorry.
get that all the time.
Yes. Kevin's our new high school principal.
Mhm.
So, can we focus on, Keith's
so one of the,
philosophy for? Yeah.
things about, your position in coming into Kewaskum,
Yeah.
Obviously has been what's been a hot topic in the news, and, it's trying to build the trust in the community. I don't know if you live here,
I don't, yeah.
okay, and I don't know if you live here,
No.
okay. Are you planning on moving here?
Opened, looking at, I have my final child graduating from high school in the next year or so that opens up opportunities for us, but haven't decided that.
Right. So the people in the community who I've been talking to, and I live in Washington County, I used to live in Kewaskum for a bit, they have a lot of questions because of a trust. How do we trust
Yep.
with what's been a hot topic in the news? So how would we grow that trust?
Yeah, I guess I just ask for continued patience, and I'm asking for a long duration of patience. I'm being advised to follow proper channels and to.
Who's advising you?
Colleagues and people that I've kind of leaned into with the way that things have gone out publicly. I don't think it's the Wauwatosa School Board driving this. I think it's others in the system. And so I'm going through what I think is the proper channels of working with the Wauwatosa School Board directly in the concerns that were raised. So again, until I'm able to process through that with them, I just don't feel like it's appropriate for me to make a public issue out of it myself
Well-
until I have a chance to work with them.
The media that we've all been watching, Tosa is blaming you.
So far, the board members are not, as far as I can tell. And I think they are not hearing at all the full story of what has transpired over the last several years in Wauwatosa. So I think that's the next steps. And I can tell you there are things happening right now with them. And so when they're comfortable sharing things publicly, then I will be comfortable sharing things publicly.
Is there legal action pending?
There's no legal action pending, no.
Did you voluntarily leave?
I voluntarily left, yes,
Did you voluntarily leave all your positions?
I did,
Did you ever threaten a lawsuit?
have not,
Did you ever sign a non-disclosure?
have not. I don't even know if you can do that in the public sector, but
Yeah, I don't know.
So with your contract here, is it a 30-day trial and then a review, or a probationary period?
so Wisconsin has statutory contract language for administrators and certified staff, and so it follows that statutory language.
And then why would it not have followed that in TOSA? Like, is this an annual contract?
It did, it was a 2-year contract in Wauwatosa that expired when I left the position.
Is this a 2-year contract here?
It is.
Judy, if you want to establish some trust, let's talk about Keith's, philosophy on budgeting, and let's
Yeah.
get into a little bit about.
I'll get there.
Okay.
Okay. Well, with the budgeting, if you want to talk about that.
Sure.
According to the media, when you left TOSA, it was 4.2 million budget error. Who was in charge of that?
So that's where I believe that those, we've kind of said in our statement here for the district, is those are unfounded, and that wasn't the school board making that comment, that was others within the system. And so I believe the school board is getting clarification on exactly what those things were, and I just, again, don't feel comfortable commenting publicly until I've had a chance to interact with that school board. I know it's been 3 or 4 weeks now, which seems like a long time, but it's not in the scheme of things. So again, the patient side on this, and there will be a time and place, And I commit to meet with you and whoever else wants to talk about things once that time and place is here.
Were you aware that something was amiss if you
Again,
were interviewing in December?
Yep, not comfortable talking about the Wauwatosa any further until I'm able to process it with them directly.
But in December, you were looking, why?
I think I knew Wauwatosa wasn't a long-term fit for me. Knew that pretty quickly after joining the district. Looked at some other opportunities along the way, decided they weren't the right decision, right fit. Kewaskum came up and it seemed like it was that.
Did you voice your concerns to any of the admin about what was going on, or the board
Again,
members?
not gonna get into that until I have a chance to work directly with that school board. I think that's the proper way to address it.
People in the community are concerned that we're next.
Yeah, I guess I would say I have 23 plus years in public education doing this role in school finance. Wauwatosa is not an experience that I would have gone into had I known what it was gonna be leading into that. The prior 20 plus years that I've served have been, I think, stellar in not only my daily work in those systems, but leaving it better than you found it, doing good work, being very proactive, being very just astute with managing district funds and making sure they're most effectively utilized. So I hope that speaks for itself, and the Wauwatosa will speak for itself when the time is right. So
Were you living in Wauwatosa? Did you move to
live in
that
Brookfield. I've lived there for almost 20 years.
So it appears the way TOSA is handling this is they're putting forth then a $16 million referendum. They talked about the 4.2 budget error, possibly because of pay that went to administration, and then in order to solve it, it would be a burden on either cutting teachers or health insurance. So just weird about how it seemed the admin benefited, if the Milwaukee media stories are correct, but then the teachers being punished. And did
Yeah,
you
that's-
get any sort of settlement in leaving?
No, it was just the end of my 2-year agreement with them. I put in my notice back in March, I believe it was, end of March. And so then they didn't issue me another contract because I had issued my resignation from the district.
So you weren't complicit in anything with admin getting a raise and then having this
So that,
4.2 million?
I don't even know that the admin raise is factual, so I'd have to see that's not,
Were you looking at the budget and working with it?
oh, very much, yes.
So you didn't see any planned pay increases?
Again, I don't want to get into the details there. There is a thorough response, and again, I'm working with that school board to make sure they understand the response and then go more public with that take on it.
Did anybody else leave the district in the wake of this? I mean,
I just learned the other day that their chief communications officer left the district. We worked quite closely on a lot of things when I was there. Don't know why, but just heard that recently.
with what you've seen in the media and whatnot, are you looking at slander or defamation? I mean, they obviously.
I prefer not to get into any of that right now. Correct.
You say this will eventually come out. What's the timeline on that?
I wish I could tell you, yeah. Patience is what I'm asking for. It won't be any longer than it has to be, but I believe, and through my, as I'm processing through that myself, I keep going back to the word be authentic, be yourself, and I want to do this process in a way that I'm comfortable with. I'm not someone who's outspoken or overly competitive, want to win, that kind of person, so I want to do this right, and I feel the right way to do it is I do have respect for the Wauwatosa School Board members, and so I like to keep that channel and that dialogue healthy and go that route versus a public back and forth that they're not a part of.
You took a pay cut to come here? What were you making in Tulsa?
I did take a pay cut to come here, but that was partially, I would say it was part of just the process of looking for another position. My entire career has kind of been the mindset of trying to step up into kind of larger districts, larger roles, larger compensation packages. So East Troy going to Elmbrook was a big step, obviously a small district, much like Kewaskum, and doing Elmbrook, which is a larger district in a affluent suburban community. Going into the private sector was another kind of shift, and then coming to Menominee Falls kind of kept me pretty even with that. Going to Wauwatosa was a marginal increase in compensation, but I'm kind of through that part of my career where you're trying to build and do that, and I wanted to look for a district where I could, I think, fit in, use my talents, work with somebody that I have high respect for, heard a lot of good things for, work with a board and a community that, again, fits kind of the mindset that I'm used to and I've been successful in, which is being fiscally conservative, balanced budgets, planning out proactively, being strategic, all those things. If I have that as my backdrop, I fit in really well to that and complement that. So that's Kewaskum.
If that is your, ingrained in you,
Yep.
why did you stay for 2 years in Tulsa?
Part of me questions why I didn't leave sooner. Obviously, if I had known where things were going, I had serious considerations of leaving sooner. The last year especially was especially difficult. The first year was kind of getting to know it. They had a revolving door of leadership positions. It was almost 100% brand new leadership team when I got there. So some of that is expected with growing pains. It became clear to me after my first year or ending my first year that it was not going to be a fit. And so I started to put out my attention into what other opportunities might be out there. And like I said, I looked at some others that just didn't seem to work for whatever reason, didn't fit. So I wasn't looking to jump and leave. And even if things hadn't worked out here, I'd probably still be in Wauwatosa. And I think it would be a much different narrative if I had still been there. So I'll kind of leave it at that.
How would that be?
I shouldn't have even said that, but I said it. So that'll come out, I think, when we get into processing more about the details of that. I guess what I would say is don't lean too heavily into what they said. It's very one-sided, and it's not one-sided even by the school board. It's what they're being told also. But I think it'll be much more obvious kind of what the situation was when I feel comfortable talking about it more.
Which is why I'm directly asking you.
Sure. Yep. And I'll respond to you directly when the time is right.
Taking a pay cut to come to Kewaskum, was this your only option? Like, why Kewaskum?
Well, part of it is the community dynamic. If you go to a lot of the suburban Milwaukee districts, the mindset is kind of maybe more Wauwatosa-like, and that just isn't kind of my mindset. My mindset is looking at other opportunities. Compensation's important, but it's not a dramatically different compensation package here than what I had previously. I've in a place where in my life where I'm looking for a healthy, satisfying work environment. Compensation is important, but it's not the leading driver for me selecting a new place to work and for coming to Kewaskum.
So in your interviews with Mark or Jim Leister or the board,
Yep.
so when you were interviewing,
Yep.
and the TOSA thing came to light, it was after you were hired. So did any of that get discussed within Kewaskum circles before you were hired?
I think the only discussion I had is that Wauwatosa wasn't a good fit for me. I realized that, recognized that, and I'm looking for an opportunity that is a good fit.
Did you ask them not to contact Wauwatosa?
Did not.
I was told you did.
No, my supervisor was listed on my application. It's an electronic application packet. I may have put something in there, don't contact until I'm offered the position, because typically that's what people ask for, is if you're not in a comfortable job environment, you want to have them not get too much of a heads up that you're out looking until it's a serious offer from the other place, and then go ahead and ask what that would have been.
And then after the serious offer was made, did you contact his previous employer?
Judy, this is about Keith and getting to know Keith.
I'm just asking.
So that's not the purpose of this interview.
I'll ask you after then?
Okay.
Okay. So one of the neighbors out of Kewaskum pointed out the $4.2 million budget mistake, I'm air quoting, in TOSA. The fact that not answering the questions before, or having asking us for patience now. What assurances does the community of Kewaskum have that this isn't going to happen here?
100% different community dynamic, board dynamic, leadership dynamic. Things just do not operate here or anywhere else that I've been a part of as they do in Wauwatosa. So, I mean, it's just, it can't happen here.
So if things do get difficult with the budget in Kewaskum or difficult in any other manner, obviously the 4.2 million, there's trying to figure it out. Wauwatosa looking at a 16 million referendum. How are you going to handle it different here? Leave?
No, so school finance is difficult in every district. So it's the school funding mechanisms don't always line up with the cost increases that we have on the expense side. And so it's just a regular part of what we do to make sure we have a balanced budget from one year to the next, and that we do so within the financial means that we have provided through the state biennial budget process. And so, again, that's the rules I'm used to living in and working in and have been successful in, and that's what Kewaskum shares as a focus for any budget process, is that we have a balanced budget, that we plan proactively.
And the budget processing is something that takes place over months and months and months, actually the whole year, and it involves over a dozen people. So you've got myself, you've got Keith, you've got the business office workers, you've got our finance committee, you've got the board. So really, the budget is not resting on just one person.
No.
The budget is really the responsibility of a large number of people.
And I would say too, the Elmbrook, Menominee Falls, and Kewaskum community and board are very similar in that they're very in tune with the budget process, the budget numbers, the way things fit with how we're planning into things, the requirement of a balanced budget strategy every year moving forward. So again, it's just the typical way most districts in the state work is the way that Kewaskum works. And so again, that's where I fit in comfortably and where my strengths will, I think, enhance the system as we move forward.
And we've got a list of pillars that we use when it comes to spending to make sure that there's accountability, there's open transparency, and that includes the reporting that we do to the board every month. That includes the audits that we do, external audits and internal audits that we do. I think I sent you the whole host of, I think, those 8 areas that we use as a way to make sure that we're accountable and to make sure that we protect ourselves from any kind of surprises.
So these are government standards, you're saying?
Some are, and some of them are
Just best practice, right?
practices, that we put in place.
So then why didn't this work in TOSA if these are standard?
Again, don't want to get into the TOSA specifics. That'll come up. It'll be part of the next steps and what we talk about when it's time to do that. But so I think you can kind of take from what I'm saying that the things I've talked about that go well, work well, they weren't in place in Wauwatosa, right? So it's a learning point for them and for everyone, I think, as we look forward.
So when you're saying this is gonna come out, how is this coming out? What do the people of taxpayers in Kewaskum, what are they looking for then?
Yeah, I think taxpayers in Kewaskum can rest assured that it's not me and my silo driving the financial affairs of the district. It's very much an open book, it's transparent. The board reporting that we do every month to the Finance Committee and the Board of Education are deeper than I would say most districts do. There's a much deeper understanding of the board members who are obviously community members. We have long-term standing board members in this community, so there's not a lot of turnover or any turnover. I don't know what the newest board member's tenure is, but they all have a deep understanding of school finance, what numbers matter, how the numbers travel through the budget cycle on an annual basis. We give a monthly financial report that clearly shows if something were an outlier, why it is, and we can explain what it is and whether it will impact the long-term budget or not. So again, we have everything in place here that gives forward-looking information to the Board of Education and community about where the budget is tracking, what it looks like, how expenditures look, all those things. So
They just had the annual meeting a couple weeks ago.
Correct.
What was the budget there then for the coming year?
about $28 million. So and we're shoring that up right now. There's additional, the actual final parameters for the budget comes out in mid-October. So that's when you get your state aid allocations, your final revenue authority, your final tax levy, all those things. Right now, we're predicting a flat tax levy tax rate. In reality, it's probably gonna be a lower tax rate because property values across the entire district are likely going up. We anticipated 0%, no increase from last year to this year. Likewise, there was a July 1 state aid estimate that came out that gave Kewaskum a lot more money than we're predicting within our budget estimates. We backed off of that because there's a lot of unknowns on the entire state funding formulas with the ending of all the federal COVID relief funding and how that might impact the formulas. MPS is restating their financials, which is gonna have a big impact on that state aid allocation. So we just backed off a little bit. It probably is gonna be better than we're predicting with the October adjustments within that. But looking at, again, at least an equal or lowering tax levy and tax rate for this system.
So 28 million in Kewaskum. What was the budget that you worked with in Tosa?
Well, all in with all funds, $110, $120 million mix, depending on which funds you want to include in that mix. Similar size to what I had, a little larger in Elmbrook.
And then the pay you were making, I don't think you stated it, the pay you were making in Tosa,
I think I sent you that.
and then what you have here? I'm just asking.
Yeah, it's about a $25,000 difference.
Okay, so what was it there and what was it here?
About 178, I think, of what it was last year, and 153, I believe, this year.
And does that include the pension and benefits?
That is just the salary.
Okay,
The pension is a percentage of salary, and that feeds into the state pension formulas.
and then
Benefits are equivalent.
and then your age,
53,
and then how many more
55,
years?
sorry.
And then well, you could retire now, correct?
I guess, but not really. When you have kids in college, you can't, but yes.
Okay, how many more years do you see yourself working?
Probably 10.
Do you see it remaining in Kewaskum, finishing out your
I
career
do.
in Kewaskum?
I am extremely impressed with the board and community, and I've offered to have calls and questions by the Kewaskum community members directly. I'm happy to meet with people and talk with people. So far, I've only had people give me positive feedback. So I would be happy to take criticisms or meet with people that have concerns directly, have them get to know me, have them get to know the system a little better. We do have community members at our board meetings, which is good to see. Some districts you don't have that, so that's good to see. But so far I've heard, like I said, positive things, and I think that will continue within this community.
When you were in Tosa, did anybody express concerns?
Community-wise?
Budget-wise, when you were obviously looking at all of this?
Yeah, so a whole different type of approach to what they're looking at. They are intentionally going for, it's not a $16 million, it's a $60 million referendum over several years, is the way that it was approved back in June. I don't know if they went back and updated it since then.
But was anybody complaining prior, say, the 2 years prior to?
Oh, very much, yes.
And then how was that handled? Did you put anything in writing? Did you talk to administration?
Yes, so we had actually a pretty engaged task force, which was a well-represented community group of people that were concerned with the spending of the district, as well as those that supported the spending. So they had quite a bit of education and knowledge and awareness of what Wauwatosa was doing and why they were doing it. Again, I don't agree with that approach, which is one of the reasons I was looking to move on, but that was the approach they were taking.
So this wasn't, like, when did your red flag go up? It wasn't $420, it wasn't $420,000. When it got to $1 million, were you writing in administration about concerns, or did you wait to $2 million? Or, this got up to 4.2 million of and I'm air quoting, budget error.
I'm glad you're air
reported.
quoting, because I think
Yeah.
you'll air quote continually with that option of it. No, the community and board were well informed by the superintendent and the leadership team of what they were doing and why they were doing it. It just became such high numbers and accelerated exponentially very quickly, but it was all done in the public venue. There were those that were very concerned with it, rightfully so. There were those that very much supported it. But again, it just didn't fit what I take as the proper approach to do something if they think they require additional funding, there is a mechanism for that, and that's to go to the voters through an operating referendum. They chose to kind of preempt that with additional spending prior to that. So that, I wouldn't have done that. That wouldn't have been my recommendation or my approach. But
So
that's,
who was doing the financing then, if this
Well,
doesn't fall on you?
It's gonna be the board and it's gonna be the superintendent are the ones that are gonna be approving.
Correct.
Is this in
that.
writing, that if I put in an ORR to Wauwatosa, it would show that you're flagging them or telling them they're over, or there's gonna be no paper trail, or it was all one-on-one conversation?
It's going to be a combination of the above. Yeah, it was a different environment, and again, that's part of my interaction with that board, making sure I talked directly with them, because that wasn't the MO in Wauwatosa. So making sure that is the conduit for now.
Mark, are you looking into anything like a 30-day or a 60-day review just to keep, and I know you don't live in the community, you're not in the community, but to keep the community informed that, how do we know that things are going and it's not going to be getting?
Well, I've already told you that we've got 8 pillars that we use for that accountability and making sure that we're open and transparent with our finances. We continuously monitor where we're at all the time. We present that to the board every single month. We report that to our finance committee every month. So yeah, we've got great processes and procedures in place to make sure that the budget is on track and that we're monitoring our spending.
So you're
Again,
guaranteeing that this won't happen here in Kewaskum?
I'm telling you, we've got protections in place that I don't believe it is.
It won't happen here. Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to add that I might have missed?
No, again, just I am thankful. I've had significant outreach from across the state from people I know and people that I don't know. I think a lot of people can see what has been put out by some at Wauwatosa and understand that is likely not the complete picture or even the picture of what transpired, and so I appreciate that. Just look forward to the coming weeks, months, whatever it takes to have the proper information come out, both for the Wauwatosa community as well as Kewaskum and others. So I'm highly confident that that this will all work out. Everything happens for a reason. You know, you look at that in your own personal life, and you know, I think this kind of thing makes me stronger, makes my work stronger, and I hope that there's some learning that can be done from this, not just for myself, but other districts, and just kind of what it takes to be proactive and stay in a healthy situation fiscally, as well as just kind of the tenor of a system. So I'm highly confident that this will make sense when the time is right. So
Are you comfortable with our conversation?
I am.
Okay, terrific.